We are live.
Live at the show, baby. All right, let's give this a second. I see me on Twitter. Very chill.
Retweet.
Yeah, I just retweeted it. All right. Check 1, 2. What's going on, world? This is short-term, high-volatility investments. My name is Jeff Sheesby, a.k.a. the old man who bets, alongside my main man, Ant Latino. You know him as the odds fellow. Ant, talk to the good people. Happy Wednesday, baby.
Happy to be live. We wanted to work through some of the technical difficulties, but most importantly, we wanted to get this sweet brick background flowing because, like brick by brick, we build bet by bet.
Damn right. Brick by brick, bet by bet. The color scheme of the bricks behind me and the wall and the graphics, not exactly where we need them to be, but we're working on it. This is the first time we've ever gone live with the podcast, which we're pretty pumped about. Of course, this will still be released, still be cut up tomorrow, 8 a.m. or so. It usually is live on Spotify, on Apple Music, wherever you get your podcasts, essentially. But for those of you who don't know who we are, we're two guys who love sports. We love data. Obviously, we're chatting with the 1:37 p.m. crowd right here, as well as some of our followers. So thank you to everybody who tunes in. Thank you to everybody that listens to the podcast weekly. Thank you to everybody that hit the follow button. And thank you and thank us for everybody that's been riding our picks lately. We're 11-2-1 on our all of our NFL picks on this podcast.
Weeks 2 through 5. Yep.
Yeah, we skipped week 1 on the podcast because we were doing futures on that one. But so far, so good. I think that's, let me check my notes, profitable. And hopefully we can keep building it on it this week.
Brick by brick.
Brick by brick, bet by bet. But anyway, we've got a great show for you guys today, or at least we think so. A couple terrible jokes about the weather that we'll get into in just a second. But mostly going to be focusing on week 6. Again, coming off a big week 5, the train just keeps rolling, man. I love it. We talked about this last week, but I think so interesting. I've had some wildly volatile weeks. Obviously, went 4-0 last on Sunday, 4-1 with the Monday game, which was great. But I've found, at least throughout the season so far, that the picks that I talk about on this show, which are well vetted, that I spend a ton of time going in, are way more profitable than the ones that at 11:55, 12:55, I'm like, fuck, I should probably play the Cowboys again this week. And just one of those things that prior preparation prevents poor performance. Amazing what happens when you stick to your guns, choose your spots, and bet wisely.
No, I've enjoyed breaking it down. It also gives us a chance to put some notes in, compare some things, so you get some different angles too. I mean, I've learned your style, and that's happened because you and I have jammed on a lot of different things, but it's one thing I would recommend to anyone that's new or experienced in gambling. There might be an angle, a stat, a trend, just something you haven't looked at a game for. I've learned so much over the last few years just interacting with people on Gambling Twitter, obviously doing this type of show, and really finding some of those different spots and how you might break something down. It's also different league by league, and different season to season. We got a little guns picks in the chat, so we do have the chat up. We'll definitely look for questions from you guys. Feel free to drop some of them in there. And we'll try to get things answered, comments, interact, have fun, get in there.
Hell yeah. I didn't realize there was a comment section there. Emmett, what's good? I can see you. Jose, Mazi, Vaishak, everybody here. Thank you guys for tuning in. We can see you. We can now also see your comments. Randomized GG, what's going on? And I think you bring up such a good point there, man. It's so interesting how you handicap games, how I handicap games, how the great Fusini handicaps games, how Guns Picks in the chat handicaps games, how my main man Sharky Waters Nation caps games. And, we have a lot of conflict at times because we all see things a little bit differently. And, I think it's just so important to remember that it's a building process, right? We joke bet by bet, brick by brick, whatever you want it to be. There's always room to grow, always room to continue learning, getting better, and hopefully leading to more profits. Again, not a get-rich-quick scheme. As much as I love a good 6-team parlay, as much as the next guy, that is not a profitable endeavor over a long period of time. So we do it one at a time. I know you fluctuate units every now and again. I'm usually one unit, but nonetheless, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and all going towards the same goal, which is beating the books together. So all good things.
Oh, yeah. So any big week 5 reactions, surprises, things for you before we dive into some Week 6 best bets and some picks?
I don't have anything too much on week 5, but I do think on this week 6 betting board that I think a lot of the lines are indicating that perhaps the teams we have seen through weeks 1 through 5 aren't the teams that Vegas is expecting us to see in the future, right? We have somehow the Bengals only -3. We've got the Steelers at -5.5. They've looked like one of the worst teams in the league for 5 weeks straight. Seahawks, who knows, right? Is their defense good? Is their defense bad? Could Jamal Adams cover anybody? Probably not. But that, for me, I think is almost more surprising and more telling than some of my overreactions, underreactions kind of across the board. But what were your biggest takeaways from week 5?
No, I think pretty similar. I mean, you had a lot of good team, bad team type of matchups, and those things kind of played out. Obviously this is not me looking at the lines and favorites versus underdogs in terms of who covered, because I'm sure that was kind of split. But when you just kind of run down some of the box scores, it was almost very chalky in a lot of places. And then some of those tougher matchups or coin flip type games, kind of went either way. But you look at the Cowboys routing the Giants, kind of what everyone expected and probably where the public was, right? The Titans, routing the Jags. Again, good team, bad team. We were luckily on that Titan spot, but 37-19, not close. I think some of the games that were a little bit more surprising were probably that Ravens and that comeback.
Big time.
But
I mean, most electric game of the season so far, yeah? Unbelievable.
Absolutely.
Couldn't get my -7 cover, of course, but from an entertainment's point of view, that thing was absolutely electric.
Yeah, and the Ravens seem to be in a game like that every single week. The other big one that I did enjoy that, hopefully some people saw, it was obviously on the West Coast, was the Browns at Chargers, 2 AFC playoff contenders. With the Chargers probably a team that has exceeded expectations. The Browns, I think, meeting expectations and playing a tough schedule. We'll touch on them a little bit later. But 47-42 final, I could not believe that I couldn't get the +2.5 cover. They ended up pushing Eckler into the end zone because it was the only way the Browns were going to get the ball back. I'm sitting there praying for the field goal, just take a knee, just finish this thing, and you had the rare defensive line, everybody on the defensive front pushing this guy into the end zone.
Great for fantasy owners, not great for my main man, Ant Latino. And I think something with week 5 here is, I think we have an idea of maybe who the good teams are. I think the question of does this team suck or are they okay is a bigger question. And I'm looking at teams like, I don't know, where do we even start? The Saints, are they good? Washington, are they good? The Eagles, are they good? Panthers, are they good? The Steelers, are they good? The Bengals. Are they good? Are the Bears good? Are the Raiders bad? Are the Niners good? I mean, every one of these. Yeah. It's like, who the hell knows, right? One week they're great. The next week they're the worst team in the league. They shouldn't even be on the JV football team practice field, for God's sakes. But, again, this is one of those things that I think we can use Vegas, their lines, to help guide us towards profit. So we'll see. Where do we want to start on week 6?
Let's dive right into one of your plays and, maybe a team that I kind of like a little bit, that I like to talk about, that you might see some memorabilia somewhere behind.
The Dallas Cowboys, perhaps?
Maybe a Tony Romo signed football. I don't know. Just saying.
Oh, hell yeah. One of the greatest placeholders in the history of football. But the Cowboys, man, great place to start, right? What are they, 5-0 against the spread here? Yep. I faded them in week 1. I've been riding them ever since, so 4-1 on the Cowboys. And let's just get this out of the way. I'm a Patriots fan, so this is a tough one for me.
So this is an emotional hedge, is what you're telling me.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying is that it's more surprising that I'm willing to bet against my own team. But again, you can't bet with your heart. You got to bet with your head. We're all about data, a little bit of art, a little bit of science, and I think the data backs this one pretty good, Ant. So let's dive in, right? For everybody watching here that hasn't seen us before, we like to focus on a few different metrics. 2 of them are DVOA and Dave. DVOA is defensive value over average, and Dave is essentially the same thing, but taking into account preseason expectations. So DVOA is looking at essentially how your team is better than the rest of the other teams, right? So we're using that ranking 1 to 32. There's an offensive DVOA. There's a defensive DVOA. There's a special teams DVOA. We like to look at offensive defense there. And then juxtapose that with Dave, which right now is 65% preseason expectations, 35% actual performance. So it gives you a little bit of a regression candidate. Are they going to be better or are they going to be worse? We're going to look at that, right? So coming into this Cowboys game, defensive DVOA, number 6, Dave, number 12. you could say that they're maybe overachieving a little bit, but this defense has looked pretty good. Patriots defense, the opposite, right? 9 DVOA, number 4 in terms of Dave. But nonetheless, between 6 and 12, 4 and 9, I think that's a little bit of a wash for me, right? I'm not over-indexing or overvaluing or undervaluing either of those. But when we look at the offensive side of here, boy, do we see a chasm.
One thing on the defense before you get into it, the
Hit it.
takeaways margin is really something the Cowboys have changed this year under Dan Quinn that they weren't doing previously, right? You know, you look at Diggs, a corner that a lot of teams I think are going to stop throwing to. He's a bit of a ball hawk, you know, reminds me of Ed Reed in that regard a little bit, you know, chasing things down. He's always kind of in position to jump a play. That's been huge for that defense and something that you haven't seen as a Cowboys fan the last few years.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And Dan Quinn, neither here nor there, not something I'm going to get too deep into here, but has historically had, at least for 3 quarters, the Patriots' number. Was it Tom Brady's number? Was it the Patriots' number? I suppose we will see. But they did play, of course, and cover against the Bucs in Week 1 here. So, long story short, with those numbers, you know, we're seeing a very large discrepancy in terms of offensive output versus between these two teams, right? So, with that considered, I thought this line once again felt pretty small. And, you know, again, as a Patriots fan, I watch all of their games. I like to be critical about them. I think this is overinflated based on how they played the Bucs. And I think if you watched that game from start to finish, I'm sure people did, it was 1, pouring rain, 2, Tom Brady missed. I have 5 wide open receivers that would have been massive chunk plays. And the best drive that the Patriots had, maybe outside of the 2-minute drill there in the hurry up, had 2 defensive pass interferences on it for like 45 yards. So I think that people are overinflating this Patriots team. And I think, honestly, that obviously I lost that bet. I was on the Bucs. But I think on a beautiful sunny fall day up in New England, out in Foxborough, I think the Patriots would have gotten blown out. So, let's look at the Patriots team here for a second. They put up 16 points, specifically their offense. This is offense is ranked 24th in the league. They put up 16 against the Dolphins, who currently have the 24th ranked defense, 25 on the Jets, currently the 21st ranked defense, 13 on the Saints. That's fine. That's the number 3 defense. 17 on the Bucs, the number 17 defense, and 25 on the Texans. Not very good either, right? So all of those things are kind of middle of the ground offensive outputs, which I think is going to be a concern because when you look at who they've played here, it's consistently below average defenses. And this offense is ranking number 24 in the league while playing consistently below average defenses. That is a major red flag for me. You know, we look at the other side of the ball here, of course, this Patriots defense has looked pretty good, as they do every year. Belichick, of course, is great at that. But their strength of schedule is number 31st in the league on the defensive side of things. So perhaps that's a little a little bit of a red flag too, allowing 22 points to the Texans. Don't love that by any means. But, you know, I think when we're looking at the Cowboys offense here, something really stands out to me, Ant. And that is that they have beaten you any way they need to. If it's through the air, they'll beat you. If it's on the ground, they'll beat you. And, you know, looking at similarly ranked defenses, this Patriots defense is number 8 against the pass, number 22 against the run for overall 9th, right? So looking through who they've played, the Bucs, great against the run, number 3. They scored 29 points, most of those in the air. The Chargers, number 11 versus the pass, tough game on the road. They still score 20. That's more than the Patriots scored most weeks. The Eagles at number 11 overall. This is a team that throws up 40, which is pretty ridiculous. 41, excuse me. And the Panthers, which is my favorite correlate here, they're number 2 overall with a number 28 strength of schedule. That's very similar to the Patriots being, you know, a top 10 ranked defense but with a very poor strength of schedule. They put up 36. And the similarities there, Ant, go even deeper. You look at the defense here, Carolina number 2 overall, New England number 9 overall. Number 2 against the pass, number 8 against the pass, number 12 against the rush, number 22 against the rush, number 28 strength of schedule, number 31 strength of schedule. So in theory, this Carolina defense has the exact same ratios, right, of being good against the run, bad against the pass, or was it vice versa? Either way, and the Patriots are just worse than that. So if they put up 36 against a Carolina Panthers defense, what are they going to do against this New England Patriots defense? I think they're going to score a whole lot of points.
I think one of the problems this year, too, is Belichick has yet to really unleash Mac. You don't know if that's a, Mac limitation thing. Is it just Belichick protecting a rookie quarterback, maybe doing the best job with rookie quarterbacks compared to, some of the struggles around the rest of the league with how those guys have performed? So I don't disagree with you on the shootout mentality of just, will they have enough horses to keep up or get stops, right? And even if they get some stops and it's a slightly better defense, or Belichick, the mastermind, has a good defensive game plan, can they really get enough stops and then score on the other side of the ball? So I tend to agree with you. 5-0 against the spread is tough to continue to replicate. So the regression is coming at some point. If Vegas figures it out. But like you said, this kind of starts as a short line. My one counter and big question for you, how do you factor in head coaching? Because obviously I do think there's a head coaching discrepancy with Mike McCarthy versus the man himself, Bill Belichick. But does that factor into when you look at a game?
I think that's obviously factored into the line, so I'm just trusting Vegas, so I'm not going too deep on that. I think the only, I don't know, call it above and beyond metric that I blindly bet is Tom Brady's 58.3% cover rate, right? I think what's interesting here is, and I was talking to some of my fellow Patriots fans, where we go deep, and they were like, the Patriots in a game like this, trying to shut down a good offense, historically would be a ground and pound to open up the play action. But they have looked terrible when they've been pounding the ball. They've been at their best when they've been a hurry-up offense here. And quite frankly, if this gets into a shootout, I don't think the Patriots can keep up. So it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't. I think they're going to put up points either way, and that's kind of say la vie.
Well, America's game of the week, probably, maybe. We might get a little Tony Romo on the call, I don't know. I'll have to check that out and get back to you guys on if that's the official 425 start. But I'm excited. And I would like to transition from one NFC East team to another. Bo's jumping in with the strength of schedule. It has been trash. But, Chargers and Bucks, two tough games to open the year, and I like how they performed in both of those. Obviously going 1-1, 2-0 against the spread. So
and anyway, Dallas is 22 strength of schedule overall. New England is 18. So if anything, that's still a flat comparison.
Yep.
One in which that there's a huge discrepancy leaning towards this Dallas Cowboys offense.
Oh yeah. So we are taking some chalk, and some more chalk. We're sitting down for a solid third grade cursive writing session on the board. That's the amount of chalk that I want out there, because I think I'm going to lay the points, and I'm going to take Kansas City and the Chiefs -7 in Washington. So the Washington football team, hopefully I don't screw this up and say the wrong word, team name.
Don't even think about it, dude.
Yeah, Shammy, who's ever listening, just be ready to bleep this. But but yeah, we are going with Casey. And look, I think this is a really interesting spot for a team that, some would say have struggled, right? Obviously coming in as, having Mahomes as the Super Bowl MVP favorite, the Chiefs probably as the favorite from a Super Bowl perspective, right up there with the Bucks. So when you look at this game, Kansas City has lost 3 games this year, but they've lost really tough games to really good opponents. The Ravens 36-35, the Chargers 30-24, and the Bills 38-20. The most recent beatdown that's just kind of sitting in everybody's brain from Sunday Night Football this past week. So the Ravens game, Baltimore comes in 8th in team DVOA, 9th offensively, 22nd defensively. The Chargers 11th overall, 7th offensively, 18th defensively. Buffalo 1st, 12th on offense, and 1st on defense. So, very good quality teams, quality opponents that they lost in a lot of, close games. They had some chances to win, some chances to come back, sometimes dug themselves a bit of too much of a hole. But now enter the best medicine you can find, right? And that's the Washington football team. Sitting there at 19th from a team DVOA perspective, 13th offensively, and I think, shockingly to a lot of people, 28th on defense. And that's really the issue of what I want to key in on here, is how bad that defense has been. Now, somehow, Kansas City's defense is actually worse, but it helps when you match up against an opponent that is having a lot of the same struggles offensively, to kind of counterpunch that, right? Because when you look at, again, who Kansas City lost to and who they gave up big points to, they were quality offenses, right? Ravens, Chargers, Bills. When you look at that offense for Washington, they come in 13th offensively from a DVO standpoint. Better than we expected. I think Heineke has done a serviceable job since Fitz went out. Yeah. But they're, again, similar to the way you were kind of breaking down the Pats and the Cowboys, at least the Pats, I think, can get some stops. I don't know how a 28th ranked defense is going to get any stops against the first ranked offense in Kansas City. And then they're not going to be able to keep up with it from an offensive standpoint, even against a garbage Kansas City team. Now, how you kind of break that down even further and what jumped out to me and why, again, in the NFL, you're comfortable laying 7 points, which is not always going to be the case, is Washington is actually 29th. They're even worse, right? So they're what I say 28th overall. They're 29th against the pass from a defensive DVO standpoint. The Chiefs are first in that same category from an offensive metric, right? The Washington football team has given up 29 points to the Giants, who were 15th, 33 points to New Orleans, 9th, and 30 points to Atlanta, who were 25th. Again, Kansas City is first. If you don't think Mahomes is going to try to get right in this situation and Andy Reid is going to get right in this situation, then you're definitely missing the boat on, again, a Washington football team defense that is underachieved. I don't know what you thought about them preseason coming in. Defensive line was hyped.
Yeah, I thought they'd be way better than they are now, especially even looking at the 28th versus 17th in terms of Dave. That is just, they've been a sieve, right? And that's not what you want against a team like the Chiefs who need to win. I mean, question for you here, Ant. This is a Chiefs team that is seemingly allergic to covering games.
Right.
You think that that's just an outlier here?
I do. It's been an interesting trend, right? We got to pull that stat up because I think we've talked about it in the last couple of pods and just see what they are over the last 15 or 20 games, because it's bad. It's not a good number.
Right.
It's the opposite of the Dallas Cowboys. That's for sure. I think one thing that I did like as kind of a good comp here was they came off a home loss to Baltimore. No, sorry, to the Chargers. The Baltimore game was in Baltimore. So a home loss. They were in Kansas City. They lost to the Chargers 30-24. The next week, where did they go? They traveled to an NFC East team to play a 1:00 game on a -7 line, and they beat down the Philadelphia Eagles.
Seems like everybody's
covering
beating
that
down
game.
Philadelphia Eagles, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully the Bucks
but I'll take it.
tomorrow night,
I'll
but
take the
neither here nor there.
-7. I'll take the cover. They were up at halftime. I think they covered that game 42-30. They led halftime 21-13, which means they also covered the first half line in that game, which I think was somewhere between 3.5 and 4.5, depending on the split. So it's a very similar spot, right? Again, you're traveling at a conference, obviously out of division, to an NFC East team to play a 1:00 game, and hopefully in a get-right spot, sitting and laying on the same line at -7. So I like that number. I do think it's an opportunity for them to get right. And when you even dig into, just doubling back a little bit to that defensive line, which was supposed to be the strength, I think, for Washington.
Yep.
The pass rush win rate, which I know is a stat we've talked about a little bit, is decent. They sit 10th at 46%. So maybe defensively, right, they can't stop the pass. The secondary has been a bit of a sieve. Maybe the pass rush can generate something and get Mahomes into trouble and cause some problems. But the counterpoint to that is KC's offensive from a pass block win rate is sitting down at 7th at 63%. So 10th, 46% in terms of pass rush win, and then 7th, 63% from a blocking standpoint. So I think even some of that good on defense might get counteracted here, and I just think they're going to struggle. So we'll see. I want points, lots of points to go with my chalk.
I love it. So you're on officially the Chiefs -7?
Chiefs -7.
And you want these points? Are you looking at a total there or no way?
Probably not, just because, again, I don't know what that Washington team is going to be, but it could be a good overplay. You got two defenses that are struggling. Should look into what that number is set at, and might be a good little sprinkle or a good little hedge spot. Maybe they don't cover because the back door is very open, and you could recoup some of that dollars or go 1-1 in a game with a bit of a total play. The Chiefs team total might be a play as well. I'm sure it'll have some inflation to it. But again, those are all set averages, off of the way the game total is set. So not a bad place to look. It's a good point.
Yeah, for sure. I think my only concern here, similar to the handicap on the Pats, right? If the Pats want to win that game, in theory, they need to dominate the run. It's a pretty good run offense from the Chiefs with Gibson. And this is a rush DVOA on this Kansas City Chiefs team at 32. So
that defense is also a sieve.
Yeah. But hey, who knows? Maybe they sell out to stop the run and say, hey, Scary Terry, if you're going to beat us, you're going to beat us because we have Tyreek Hill. So if you're going to go 1-1 there, I guess I go with the Chiefs as well.
Speed.
All right, good stuff.
Where does it take us?
So no
one
play.
more play?
That takes us, we got one more play here, I believe. And I'm looking at the Cardinals here at +3, -114. That line currently available on FanDuel.
Still undefeated, right?
Yeah, still undefeated. So, I don't love that I'm going on a team this week that's 5-0 against the spread, another one that's 5-0 straight up. But, I'm following the data more so than anything else outside of, trends. So, should they regress? Probably. Do I think they're going to regress this week? No. it's time in market, not timing the market. And I'm not going to try to predict when one of these teams crashes when the data still holds true. So when we look at the cards here, obviously they're playing the Browns. One thing right off the top that's a big concern of mine, shout out to the great Fusini for this tip. The wind, as of right now, looks like it's going to be howling in Cleveland. Not surprising coming off that Great Lake. And that's okay, but keep an eye on it. If it gets too windy, call it 13 miles per hour plus, perhaps tread lightly on this one. But we're going to assume that the wind will be okay, and we're going to follow the season stats so far. So Cardinals on defense, number 4. Browns on defense, number 12. Great. Offense, pretty much a wash here. Cards, 8. Browns, number 6. So very, very similar here. The Dave for the Cards defense is number 10 versus number 4. So I'm calling it almost a wash. Pretty equal, with plus or minus a few, variance here. It's pretty equal. And, we look at yards per play, we look at points per play. Also very similar. Cards offense, yards per play, 6.3. Browns, 6.3. Offensive points per play for the Cardinals, 4.482. For the Browns, 0.426. So again, any given Sunday, those are very, very close. Defense, we're seeing the same. While there's a little bit of an advantage for the Cardinals on offense, there's a little bit of an advantage for the Browns on defense, at least from a yards per play perspective. 5.6 for the Cardinals, 5.1 for the Browns. But this defense for the Cards is winning the points per play, but still very, very close. 0.304, 0.390. So similar all around. Easy answer is, okay, you take the dog. Factor in home field advantage. That's 2 to 3 points. Bam, you have your line. -2.5, -3. Pretty sharp. Perhaps you can conclude no action. But, and that is what I did on the original Ocular Pat Down, as I tweeted out that this board looks quite difficult this week. But went a little bit deeper here, and found some interesting tidbits that I'd like to talk about here. We look about this Cleveland defense. Let's start there. They rank number 19th against the pass and number 5 against the run. Strength of schedule versus offenses is number 20, which that tells me that run number 5 might be a little inflated. But we look at teams they've played here. The Chiefs have a good offense. They scored 33. The Chargers have a good offense. They scored 47. The Texans have a mediocre offense. They scored 21. The Bears, at the time, I think still do have a mediocre offense. They only scored 6. And the Vikings are inconsistent. They're ranked number 17 in terms of offensive efficiency here. They only scored 7. So this is a defense that's allowed points to good offenses and stopped bad offenses. Enter the Cardinals, who rank number 4 on offense. And, I think this Cardinals offense is obviously wildly interesting. They seem to have unlimited weapons, very similar to the Cowboys, a lot of ways to beat you. Their aerial attack is elite, number 6, and then the Browns, number 19. In terms of pass defense, I think we love that. But again, the wind could very much sour that stat there. So nonetheless, I love that. And, look at the Browns matchup here. They do match up pretty well on offense compared to this Cardinals defense. The Browns are number 14 in the air, but number 1 against the rush, which is essentially the inverse of the Cardinals defense. They're better against the pass, worse against the rush. But Baker is banged up, so I don't mind fading him. You look
shoulder
at him 2
injury,
weeks ago.
Non-throwing shoulder, but not good nonetheless.
A couple good hits from the pretty scrappy D-line who had, 6 or 7 sacks in week 1. I like that. And, of course, you could say, well, Baker's fine. He bounced back against the Chargers last week, 305 yards, 2 touchdowns. Sure, but 50% of those yards, 149 of them, went to their tight end, Joku. And interestingly enough, the Chargers are number 28th in the league against tight ends this year. The Cardinals are number 1 in the league against tight ends per CBS Sports. So that is something that, all right, Baker bounced back. But the one thing that he did well is something that this defense does really, really well. So I like to look at the Rams here as a corollary because they rank number 16 against the pass, and the Browns are number 19. And, this is a team, the Arizona team on the road, went out and smashed that Rams team. So at the end of the day, I think Arizona just has more ways to win this game, similar to the Cowboys, right? They can win on the ground. They can win in the air. They'll be scrappy. Their defense is good enough. And that, for me, is good enough. I'm going to take them at +3, -114, currently available at FanDuel Sportsbook.
I think this is going to be a great game and one that I definitely want to sit back and watch. I think what you laid out is key. Kyler has been very good, MVP candidate, Kyler Murray, right? Could he get there? He's been healthy, which he was not down the stretch, and I think you've seen a big difference. The interesting thing with the Browns, I think, in this type of matchup, and again, the weather could factor into it, is you don't want them to get behind, right? Like if they get behind and get into a hole, that's not the type of game plan that I think Baker, injured or not, can really execute. I hate to call him a game manager, but he's definitely benefited from that defense and from that running game being so good with the the 1-2 punch that they do have. That I think in a hole, in a deficit, again, trying to keep up, similar to that, the other two breakdowns that we give, I think that would be a little tougher. So you really, if you are on the Cleveland side here, you would need that defense to step up early and often, and that run game to control things and not fall behind.
Yep. Amen. I agree.
So let's not get that. We want the opposite of that.
Yeah. Blowout early and often. No wind.
Bang.
Beautiful day in Cleveland.
Yep.
People are drinking pumpkin beers out in the parking lot because it is fall, it is autumn, and we love those.
It's officially 30 minutes and 13 seconds into the broadcast before the first pumpkin beer reference.
Yeah, which is perhaps the longest ever. I think sharp
Shame.
bettors had it. The line was at 17.5, and I guess they knew that we had to regress back and get into that over. So cash that.
The other lean, and I think you mentioned this at the top, and I think it's a strong line. I think it opened pre-Russell Wilson injury. It was probably somewhere between -1 and -2 the other way, and has swung like a full 5.5, 6 points to Pittsburgh. -4.5 is the Sunday night game.
Sure.
In Pittsburgh, between Seattle and Pittsburgh. They don't have the home field advantage, Seattle being at home. You have a Pittsburgh team that really hasn't looked good, but maybe finds a bit of a groove and a get-right spot against Denver. And I just honestly, I think you're going to see firsthand, how valuable Russell Wilson is to that team over these next few
They're starting
weeks.
Geno Smith, is it?
I believe so. And Geno actually looks pretty good. Fairly competent. I didn't realize he was in the league anymore. But
Yeah. Surprise.
Yeah.
I thought the Jets ruined him too,
But I do lean Pittsburgh in that game. I'm going to dig a little bit more, the fact that it is Sunday night, and look at it. It's hard to trust the Steelers offense and whatever Ben Roethlisberger has done this year. But again, when you're matching up against Geno and a Seahawks team that's trying to find themselves on the road, Pittsburgh's not really a place I want to play in prime time against a good defense. So 4.5 might be a touch too many, but I could definitely see that being easily a 3-6, 3-7 point W for the Steelers trying to get back to 500.
Yeah, that feels good. I like that a lot, honestly. I kind of totally spaced that Geno was going to be taking the helm there.
Yeah,
the only other game I think
Russell
I'm looking
Wilson's
at here,
finger, it was going some different directions.
Yeah, not how you draw it up. I think the only other game I'm looking at here is by the Bills -6. Again, a little trappy.
That's Monday night, right?
Yeah, Titans are getting healthy, right?
Yeah.
A couple of defensive starters
Scrappy,
coming back.
always scrappy.
Both receivers coming back. They kind of turned it around last week, but I mean it was the Jags. But one thing I like here is
those were
huge
games
discrepancy.
they coming off a loss to the Jets, so it's not like they haven't had letdown spots, so it's almost better to see them actually put their foot all the way down to the pedal and get the job done even against a bad team.
Yeah, big time, man, big time. But one stat here that I'll call out because we're pushing up on time here. But defensive DVOA for the Bills, number 1. Obviously, their strength of schedule isn't fantastic, but the Titans here is number 30 or number 27 on defense. So when you have this high-powered offense of the Bills going against one of the worst defenses in the league, I don't know if
That's
number
what
6
Tyler Walsh is saying.
Is a lot.
He's talking about that Titans secondary. Here it comes. Titans secondary is fact.
This is a Titans defense that's allowing 6.2 yards per play, which is mediocre. A Buffalo defense that's allowing 4.3. That is a huge gap. That's as big as it gets in the NFL. Titans have just been inefficient in the red zone is what it boils down to. But either way, the Buffalo's also winning that yards per play and points per play on offense. So I think 6 is enough. I think Buffalo continues to be elite. And
Love to see it. You know what I'm doing before football this weekend?
Getting some pumpkin beers or
apple picking, apple cider, pumpkin beers, fall activities.
You better get some of those motherfucking donuts, bro.
Cider donuts.
Those apple cider donuts are elite, almost as elite as Davis Mills looked last week, almost as elite as Joe Flacco used to be. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for listening. Live viewers, thank you for tuning in. Chat, thank you for contributing, asking questions, chiming here or there. I still don't think that the Cowboys are overrated, even though because of their strength of schedule. Anyway, this was, and this always will be short-term, high volatility investments. We'll see you next week.
Cheers, all.